the shadow of a lost city. Atlantis is a name that has echoed through the corridors of history, a tale woven from the threads of brilliance, downfall, and enduring mystery. First mentioned by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, Atlantis was described as a magnificent civilization that vanished in a single night. Its story has captivated historians, explorers, and visionaries for centuries, but beyond fascination, the legend continues to provoke scientific inquiry, undersea exploration, and intense debate over what is truth and what is myth. In this documentary, we will trace the footsteps of Atlantis using only verifiable sources. Starting from Plato's accounts in the dialogues, Timaeus and we will explore how this city was portrayed, advanced in technology, moral in purpose, and devastating in its downfall. We will examine the figures central to this legend: Plato, the philosopher who recorded the tale; Solon, the lawmaker who allegedly heard it from Egyptian priests; and the modern researchers who risk careers and credibility in their pursuit of lost truth. We will also evaluate numerous scientific claims linking Atlantis to real-world locations, from the volcanic ruins of Santorini and the mysterious depths of the Caribbean to the waters beyond the Pillars of Heracles. Each hypothesis will be measured against archaeological, geological, and historical evidence. The objective is not to prove or disprove a fantasy, but to reveal the complexity and weight of what may lie behind the legend. Atlantis is not merely a tale of catastrophe. It is a mirror held to human ambition, pride, and the consequences of unchecked power. Whether it was real or metaphorical, its message remains. Even the greatest empires can fall when they lose balance with nature and virtue. As we embark on this journey, the question of Atlantis' existence becomes a portal into a deeper understanding of ancient civilizations, philosophical intent, and the hunger for discovery that defines humanity. This is not just a story about a city lost beneath the sea. It is a story about us. Plato, the philosopher behind the legend. To understand Atlantis, we must first understand the man who gave it a voice. Plato, one of the greatest thinkers of ancient Greece, was not merely a philosopher, but a master of allegory, logic, and ethics. Born in 427 BC into an aristocratic family in Athens, he was a student of Socrates and later became the teacher of Aristotle. Through his dialogues, Plato shaped the foundations of Western philosophy. But among his many contributions, none has sparked more curiosity than his account of Atlantis. The story appears in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC. Plato introduces Atlantis as a mighty naval power that existed 9,000 years before his time, beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the strait known today as the Strait of Gibraltar. In Critias, he expands the narrative, describing a utopian society with advanced architecture, organized governance, and unmatched military strength. The land was fertile, rich in resources, and home to a disciplined, noble people, until corruption seeped in. Plato claimed the story was passed down through his ancestors, a respected Athenian lawmaker who traveled to Egypt and learned about Atlantis from priests in the city of Sais. According to Plato, the priests described Atlantis as a cautionary tale. Once virtuous, the Atlanteans grew arrogant and sought to dominate the known world. In response, the gods punished them, and the entire island sank into the sea in a single day and night. Many scholars believe Plato created Atlantis as an allegory, a metaphor for the decline of moral values in society. They argued that the story reflects his philosophical ideals rather than historical truth. However, others believe Plato based his account on real events, possibly distorted through oral tradition and time. Volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, or forgotten civilizations could have inspired his tale. What makes Plato's account so compelling is its detail. He describes the city in exact measurements, concentric rings of land and water, a vast canal system, and temples coated in precious metals. These specificities have led many to wonder, was he truly inventing, or was he preserving the remnants of a lost history? Regardless of its origin, Plato's narrative laid the foundation for one of the most enduring mysteries of human civilization. Whether Atlantis was fact or fiction, its seed was planted in the mind of a philosopher who knew how to blend imagination with meaning. Solon, the lawmaker who heard the tale, before Plato put the story of Atlantis into writing, he credited the tale to one man, Solon, a renowned statesman, poet, and lawmaker of ancient Athens. Solon lived around 638 to 558 BC and was celebrated for his wisdom, reforms, and diplomatic influence. Though often remembered for his restructuring of Athenian law and politics, his connection to the Atlantis narrative is what preserved the myth for future generations. According to Plato in the Cretaceous dialogue, Solon traveled to Egypt during his later years. There, he visited the Temple of Neth in the city of Sais, where priests shared with him a story far older than any Greek record. The Egyptians, known for their meticulous preservation of historical texts, allegedly kept accounts of a great island civilization beyond the Pillars of Heracles. This land, Atlantis, was said to have waged war against ancient Athens and ultimately perished due to divine punishment. Solon was deeply impressed by the tale and intended to write a poem or philosophical work based on the account. However, he never completed it. The knowledge was passed down through his lineage, eventually reaching Plato. The philosopher claimed he inherited the unfinished legacy and chose to continue it through his own writings. Solon's role in the story is essential. His reputation for honesty and his position as a bridge between Greece and Egypt lent credibility to the Atlantis account. Plato's invocation of Solon was likely not accidental. By anchoring the story in the authority of a respected historical figure, Plato reinforced the seriousness of the tale. Whether Solon truly heard the account from Egyptian priests, or whether this connection was part of Plato's literary strategy remains debated. Egypt, in the context of this story, plays a symbolic and historical role. Egyptian civilization was ancient even in Solon's time, with a rich tradition of recording events on temple walls, papyri, and monuments. If any culture had the means to preserve memories of a lost continent, it was Egypt. While no independent Egyptian texts referring to Atlantis had been discovered, the framework Plato built using Solon's journey offered an aura of authenticity. Solon stands as the vital link between distant history and philosophical reflection, between a real man's travels and a legend that would echo for millennia. Atlantis described, a city of wonder and power. Plato's description of Atlantis is among the most detailed portrayals of any ancient city found in classical literature. Far from being a vague myth, Atlantis was outlined with remarkable precision. According to Plato, the island was enormous, larger than Libya and Asia combined, and located in the Atlantic Ocean. Beyond the Pillars of Heracles, it was a land of great natural beauty, abundant resources, and architectural brilliance. At the heart of Atlantis stood its capital, a city designed in concentric circles of land and water. 3 rings of water surrounded 2 rings of land, forming a pattern that was both defensive and aesthetic. Bridges connected each ring, and a grand canal led directly to the sea, allowing ships to travel through the city's center. This intricate layout reflected both advanced engineering and intentional urban planning, a society in complete control of its environment. The central island housed the royal palace and a magnificent temple dedicated to Poseidon, the sea god who, according to Plato, fathered the royal bloodline. The temple was vast, plated with silver, covered in shining orichalcum, and decorated with sculptures of horses, sea creatures, and gods. At its center stood a colossal statue of Poseidon riding a chariot drawn by winged horses, a symbol of divine authority and maritime power. The Atlanteans were said to possess immense wealth. Their land offered everything: precious metals, fertile plains, forests, and wildlife. Their navy was unmatched, with a vast fleet capable of dominating neighboring lands. Culturally and politically, they maintained order through a system of 10 kings, each ruling a region, but united under one supreme law, said to be inscribed on a pillar of orichalcum in the temple. But Plato emphasized not only their power, but also their virtue. In the beginning, the Atlanteans were noble, disciplined, and just. They lived in harmony with nature and upheld a code of moderation. However, as generations passed, their moral compass weakened. Greed, pride, and ambition corrupted them. They sought to conquer the world and lost favor with the gods. The grandeur of Atlantis, as described by Plato, offers more than just fantasy. It represents an ideal, a civilization at the peak of glory and on the brink of collapse. Its fate was not merely a punishment, but a consequence of forgetting the values that once made it great. The fall of Atlantis, divine judgment and sudden destruction. The most dramatic part of the Atlantis story is not its rise, but its fall. According to Plato in Cretios, the destruction of Atlantis was swift, total, and triggered by divine intervention. After centuries of prosperity, the Atlanteans grew corrupt. Their virtues pride overtook humility. They sought to dominate not only the Mediterranean but the entire known world. It was this hunger for power that sealed their fate. The gods, watching the growing arrogance of Atlantis, decided to act. Poseidon, once protector and father of the Atlantean kings, turned away from his descendants. No longer were they guided by divine wisdom. Instead, they became tyrants. Their military campaigns reached the borders of ancient Athens, a city that, in Plato's account, stood for justice and resistance. Athens repelled the invasion, and the victory marked the moral superiority of a virtuous state over a decaying empire. Soon after, disaster struck Atlantis. In a single day and night, the earth quaked violently. The seas surged. Mountains crumbled. The vast island, along with its people, sank beneath the waves. Nothing was left but a muddy, impassable sea, where once a mighty civilization thrived. Plato presents this as more than a natural catastrophe. It was a judgment, a cosmic response to human corruption. Theories and locations. Searching for the lost empire. Ever since Plato first described Atlantis, scholars, adventurers, and scientists have attempted to locate it. While many accept it as allegory, others believe Atlantis may have been a real place, its story distorted by time and memory. Over the centuries, numerous locations have been proposed, some grounded in science, others born of speculation. One of the most discussed theories links Atlantis to the island of Santorini, once known as Thera. Around 1600 BC, a massive volcanic eruption destroyed much of the island and caused tsunamis that reached distant shores. This disaster severely weakened the Minoan civilization, which was advanced in art, architecture, and maritime power. Some scholars believe Plato may have based his story on distorted memories of this catastrophe, passed down through oral tradition over generations. Another theory points to the region near the Strait of Gibraltar, where Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Heaven. Researchers have identified submerged structures and landforms near the Spanish coast, particularly in the Donana wetlands. Some believe these formations may be remnants of an ancient city that was destroyed by floods. Others look to the Caribbean, where underwater formations off the coast of Cuba sparked theories about submerged ruins. Satellite images and sonar scans have revealed geometric patterns beneath the sea. Though many experts believe these to be natural formations, despite the lack of clear evidence, these findings continue to fuel interest. Further proposals place Atlantis in Antarctica, under the ice, or link it to the myth of Lemuria, or the sea peoples of the Bronze Age collapse. While these ideas stretch the boundaries of mainstream archaeology, they highlight the global fascination with Atlantis and the human desire to uncover forgotten chapters of history. Despite centuries of searching, no universally accepted evidence of Atlantis has been found. Scientific institutions remain cautious. Many argue that the lack of artifacts, inscriptions, or consistent records suggests that Atlantis was never a physical place, but a moral lesson shaped as myth. Yet, the mystery persists. What makes the Atlantis story so enduring is not just the possibility of a lost city, but the open-endedness of the tale. It invites curiosity, it challenges assumptions, and it leaves just enough room for belief that somewhere, beneath the ocean or buried under centuries of earth, a trace of truth still waits to be discovered. Atlantis and modern science. Between myth and geology, the legend of Atlantis has drawn not only historians and adventurers, but also geologists, archaeologists, and ocean. Modern science has played a crucial role in evaluating the plausibility of Plato's account. Though no conclusive evidence has emerged, scientific advances have offered new tools to investigate ancient disasters, seafloor landscapes, and lost civilizations. Geologists have studied tectonic plate activity and historical tsunami patterns in areas often associated with Atlantis. For instance, the eastern Mediterranean, particularly the Aegean Sea, has a violent seismic history. The eruption of Thera, which devastated the island of Santorini, is one of the most powerful volcanic events in recorded history. It produced massive ash clouds, tsunamis, and regional climate disruptions. Some scientists argue that this event might have inspired stories of a powerful island destroyed in a cataclysm. Submarine mapping technologies, including sonar and satellite imaging, have allowed researchers to examine the ocean floor with unprecedented detail. Teams have explored regions in the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean, and even off the coasts of South America. While they have discovered submerged structures and unusual formations, none have provided definitive proof of an advanced, prehistoric civilization matching Plato's Atlantis. Symbolism and meaning. Plato's moral warning. To fully grasp the depth of the Atlantis story, one must look beyond geography and ruins. Atlantis is not just a tale of a lost city, it is a philosophical message. Plato did not present it as mere entertainment. He embedded the narrative within his broader discussions on politics, virtue, and human nature. Understanding Atlantis means interpreting the symbolic weight it carried within his dialogues. In Timaeus and Critias, Plato contrasts Atlantis with ancient Athens, not the Athens of his time, but an idealized version. This Athens is modest, just, and devoted to wisdom and the gods. Atlantis, in contrast, begins as a virtuous nation, but gradually becomes consumed by material wealth, ambition, and moral decay. Its destruction is not only a punishment by the gods, but a natural consequence of its loss of balance. This duality is central to Plato's philosophy. He believed that societies, like individuals, must live in harmony with justice and reason. When a civilization values power and luxury above all else, it becomes vulnerable to collapse. Atlantis represents what happens when a society forgets its foundational values. In this way, the story serves as a moral mirror, not just for ancient Greece, but for all civilizations. The 10 kings of Atlantis symbolize the decentralization of power that initially promotes order, but later breeds division and conflict. The Temple of Poseidon, once a sacred center, becomes a monument to excess. The technological and architectural marvels, while impressive, are used not to benefit society, but to control and dominate others. These elements echo the dangers Plato saw in his own world: the rise of imperialism, corruption, and the decline of civic virtue. Plato's use of a distant, unnamed ocean island allows him to project this warning beyond Greece. Atlantis becomes a universal example, timeless in its relevance. Its collapse is not merely a result of divine will, but of ethical erosion, a civilization that achieved everything except the wisdom to sustain it. By placing this message within a compelling narrative, Plato ensured its survival. The mystery of Atlantis keeps the story alive, but its message gives it meaning. As modern societies grapple with their own challenges, political and moral, the lessons of Atlantis remain clear. Civilizations rise, they innovate, they expand. But without wisdom and restraint, even the greatest can fall. Atlantis in popular culture, from philosophy to fantasy. Over time, the story of Atlantis evolved far beyond Plato's original dialogues. From a moral lesson in ancient philosophy, it became a symbol of wonder, adventure, and lost knowledge in global popular culture. Writers, filmmakers, mystics, and conspiracy theorists have all reimagined Atlantis, transforming it into everything from an underwater kingdom to an alien outpost. While many interpretations stray from historical roots, they demonstrate the enduring fascination with the idea of a lost advanced civilization. During the Renaissance, renewed interest in classical texts brought Atlantis back into the intellectual spotlight. Thinkers like Francis Bacon reinterpreted Plato's ideas in utopian terms. In his 1627 work, New Atlantis, Bacon envisioned a society dedicated to science, discovery, and human betterment. Though fictional, it was a serious proposal for how knowledge should guide civilization, echoing Plato's ethical warnings. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Atlantis gained traction in mystical and pseudoscientific circles. Writers like Ignatius Donnelly popularized the idea that Atlantis was the cradle of all civilization. In his 1882 book Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, Donnelly claimed that ancient Egypt, the Americas, and Europe all inherited knowledge from the Atlanteans. Though lacking evidence, the book influenced generations of speculative thinkers. Atlantis became a recurring theme in spiritual movements like Helena Blavatsky, and later writers described Atlantis as a spiritually advanced society whose downfall resulted from misused psychic powers. These ideas, while not supported by science, blended the myth with esoteric beliefs, expanding its reach. Modern media embraced Atlantis in film, animation, and literature. From Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, the city is often portrayed as a magical, futuristic world hidden beneath the sea. In these versions, Atlantis is no longer just a cautionary tale. It becomes a place of hope, mystery, or technological marvel. Science fiction and conspiracy theories added more layers. Some linked Atlantis to alien civilizations or claimed advanced ancient technology was buried beneath the oceans. These ideas often ignore historical and scientific rigor, but they reflect a deeper desire to believe that somewhere, knowledge and power far greater than ours once existed. Even when distorted, Atlantis continues to inspire. It challenges us to imagine what might have been, what could be lost, and what lessons remain hidden in our own history. That is the power of myth, to evolve, adapt, and speak to every generation. Conclusion: the enduring echo of Atlantis. Atlantis, whether real or imagined, continues to resonate because it represents more than just a lost city. It is a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting our dreams of perfection, fears of collapse, and deep desire to uncover forgotten truths. Plato's tale, though written over 2,000 years ago, still captivates the modern world because it weaves together morality, mystery, and myth in a way few stories ever have. Throughout this journey, we have examined Atlantis through multiple lenses. We began with Plato, the philosopher who shaped the narrative not only to entertain but to warn. We explored the role of Solon, the Athenian statesman whose journey to Egypt supposedly brought the legend into Greece. We studied the architectural marvels and cultural achievements of the Atlanteans, as well as their descent into arrogance and destruction. Scientific inquiry has offered clues, from the eruptions of ancient Thera to the exploration of submerged structures. Yet none of these findings have confirmed Atlantis as a historical reality. Instead, they deepen the mystery and remind us how little we know about ancient history. The legend has grown beyond its origins, fueled by imagination, reinterpretation, and the eternal human quest for lost wisdom.
In the end, Atlantis may not be a place we can find on a map. Its power lies in what it represents the tension between advancement and ethics, the fragility of greatness, and the consequences of forgetting our moral foundations. For Plato, the tale was a philosophical tool, a way to explore the rise and fall of societies and the role of virtue in shaping their fate. Today, Atlantis endures as both legend and lesson. It warns that even the most powerful civilizations can fall, not from outside threats, but from within, from hubris, greed, and the abandonment of principle. It also inspires, urging us to imagine societies rooted in wisdom, balance, and justice, whether hidden beneath the sea or only within our imagination. Atlantis remains alive, not as a forgotten city, but as a timeless idea. It invites us to remember, to question, and to seek. And perhaps that is the greatest truth it offers, that the pursuit of understanding is itself the legacy of Atlantis.